I always thought Dylan couldn't stand me. Not in a dramatic, enemies kind of way. Just that quiet, subtle dislike. The kind where someone's polite when they have to be, but you can feel they'd rather be literally anywhere else than standing next to you. And the worst part? I had no idea why. We worked together for almost a year before anything changed. Same office, same floor, same routine. I was the guy who kept his head down, did his work, grabbed coffee alone. Dylan, he was the opposite. Confident without trying, always surrounded by people, the kind of guy who somehow made even small talk sound interesting. And yeah, I noticed him. Of course I did. It wasn't just that he was attractive, though, yeah, he definitely was. Tall, broad shoulders, that messy dark hair that looked like he just run a hand through it every 5 minutes. It was more the way he carried himself. Like he knew exactly where he stood in any room. Meanwhile, I felt like I was constantly trying not to be in the way. At first, I tried to be friendly. You know, normal coworker stuff. Morning. Hey. How was your weekend? Basic. Easy. But every time, Dylan's responses were short. Not rude exactly, just clipped. Like he was answering out of obligation, not interest. Good. Fine. Busy. That was it. No follow-up. No questions back. After a while, I stopped trying. It's funny how quickly your brain fills in the blanks. If someone doesn't engage, you assume the worst. I told myself he probably found me annoying. Or boring. Or both. Maybe he'd figured me out somehow. Maybe he just didn't like guys like me. So I kept my distance. Which worked, until it didn't. Because the thing about avoiding someone is, eventually, life throws you into a situation where you can't. And for me, that moment came on a Thursday night. It had already been a long day. Half the office had cleared out early, and I was stuck finishing a project that should have been done hours ago. Numbers, revisions, emails, it all blurred together until my eyes started to burn. By the time I finally leaned back in my chair, stretching my arms over my head, the office was quiet. Too quiet. I glanced around, expecting to see at least a few people still working late, but most of the lights were off. Except one. Across the room. Dylan's desk. Of course. I let out a quiet breath, debating whether to just pack up and leave without saying anything. That would have been the easiest option. Slip out, avoid the awkwardness, go home. But then I heard his voice. You're still here? I froze for half a second before turning. He was leaning back in his chair, watching me. Not with that usual distant look, something else. Something more focused. Yeah, I said, shrugging like it wasn't a big deal. Had to finish this thing. He nodded slowly, like he was considering that. Same. Silence stretched between us. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, just unfamiliar. We'd never really talked like this before. No one else around. No background noise to fill the gaps. Just us. I grabbed my bag, slinging it over my shoulder. I'm heading out. Wait. The word came out quick. Almost too quick. I paused, turning back toward him. Yeah? Dylan stood up, running a hand through his hair like he always did when he was thinking. You parked in the back lot, right? That caught me off guard. Yeah? It's pretty much empty now, he said. I was heading out too. We can walk together. For a second, I just stared at him. Walk together? This was the same guy who barely said 2 words to me most days. Sure, I said finally, trying to keep my tone casual. We left the office side by side, the sound of our footsteps echoing faintly in the hallway. The building felt different at night, quieter, heavier somehow. I was hyper-aware of everything. The way he walked just slightly ahead of me at first, then slowed down, matching my pace. The way his arm brushed mine once, briefly, like either of us expected it. Long day? He asked. I blinked, glancing at him. Yeah. You. He let out a quiet huff of a laugh. Always. There was something about the way he said it that felt real. Not like the short, dismissive answers I was used to. We stepped outside, the cool night air hitting instantly. The parking lot was almost completely empty. Just a few scattered cars. And mine, parked way in the back. Of course. We walked in silence for a bit, but it wasn't the same kind of silence as before. This one felt heavier. Like there was something underneath it, something neither of us was saying. Then, out of nowhere, Dylan spoke again. You think I don't like you, don't you? I stopped walking. My heart did this weird, sharp jolt in my chest. What? He turned to face me fully now, his expression unreadable. You've been avoiding me, he said. For a while. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Because what was I supposed to say to that? Deny it? Lie. I just figured. I started, then trailed off. Figured what? His voice was softer now. Not accusing. Just curious. I hesitated, then exhaled. That you weren't exactly a fan of me. There. Said it. For a second, he just stared at me. And then, he laughed. Not in a mean way. Not mocking. More like, surprised. Jackson, he said, shaking his head slightly. You really got that completely wrong. That made my stomach twist. Then what is it? I asked, more blunt than I intended. Because if he didn't dislike me, then what the hell was all of this? Dylan stepped closer. Not a lot. But enough. Enough that I could suddenly feel the shift in the air between us. The kind of tension that sneaks up on you before you even realize it's there, just like in those moments that start small and slowly build into something you can't ignore. You want to know the truth? He said quietly. I swallowed. Yeah. He held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. Because being around you, he started, his voice lower now, is a lot harder than you think. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about Dylan started to fall apart. I didn't know what I expected him to say. But it definitely wasn't that. Because being around you is a lot harder than you think. The words just hung there between us, heavy, impossible to ignore. I frowned slightly, trying to make sense of it. What does that even mean? Dylan didn't answer right away. He looked different. Not like the guy at work. Not the confident, always in control version of him I'd gotten used to watching from a distance. This was something else. Quieter. Tense, even. Like he was choosing his words carefully. It means, he said slowly, I've been trying not to cross a line. My chest tightened. A line? He let out a small breath, glancing away for a second before looking back at me. With you. That didn't help. If anything, it made it worse. I gave a short, confused laugh. Okay, you're gonna have to explain that, because right now it just sounds like you're speaking in riddles. For a second, I thought he might brush it off. Say never mind. Go back to being distant, shut this whole thing down. Instead, he stepped closer. Close enough now that I could actually feel the heat from him, even in the cool night air. Jackson, he said, quieter this time. You ever notice how you look at me? That caught me completely off guard. What? No, I don't. Yeah, you do. His voice wasn't teasing. It wasn't accusing either. Just certain. My stomach flipped. I think you're imagining things, I said quickly, even though my voice didn't sound as steady as I wanted it to. Dylan tilted his head slightly, studying me. Am I? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I had been careful. Or at least I thought I had. Kept everything buried, locked down, out of sight. The last thing I wanted was to make things weird at work. Especially with someone like him. But now I wasn't so sure what he had seen. Or what he thought he saw. You don't have to say it, he added softer. I'm not trying to call you out. Then what are you doing? I asked. Another step closer. Now there was barely any space left between us. I'm trying to figure out if I've been crazy, he said. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might actually give me away. Crazy how? His jaw tightened slightly, like he was debating whether to say it out loud. Then he did. Because every time you're around, he said, I have to act like I don't notice you. That hit harder than I expected. I blinked at him. You don't notice me? He let out a quiet, almost frustrated laugh. That's the problem, he said. I notice too much. Silence. Thick. Charged. Completely different from anything we'd ever had before. I could feel it now, that tension that had been building without me realizing it. All those moments I'd brushed off, all those looks I thought I imagined. They weren't one-sided. You've been avoiding me, he continued, his voice lower now. Not because you thought I didn't like you, but because you were trying not to make it obvious. I shook my head instinctively. That's not Jackson. The way he said my name. It stopped me. Not loud. Not forceful. Just firm. Grounding. You don't have to lie, he said. Not right now. And for some reason, I didn't. Maybe it was the way he was looking at me. Or the fact that we were alone, no coworkers, no distractions, no easy escape. Just the truth, sitting right there between us. I didn't think you'd ever. I started, then exhaled. You're always with girls. You never. Yeah, he cut in. That's what I thought too. That made my brows pull together. What? He rubbed the back of his neck, looking slightly embarrassed? Which didn't seem possible for someone like him. I've never. He paused, searching for the words. Look, I didn't plan this, all right? It just happened. Happened? I echoed. With you. The way he said it. It wasn't casual. It wasn't something he was brushing off. It sounded real. And that made it 10 times more intense. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. So what, you've just been pretending you don't see me this whole time? Yeah. Why? He gave me a look like the answer should have been obvious. Because we work together, he said. Because I didn't know if I was reading it wrong. And because if I wasn't. He trailed off, his eyes flicking down for a split second before meeting mine again. Then I had no idea what I was supposed to do about it. That hit something in my chest I wasn't ready for. Because I'd been asking myself that same question for months. What are you supposed to do when the one person you want is the one person you're convinced you can't have? The air between us felt different now. Heavier. Closer. Like something had shifted and there was no going back to how things were before. You could have just talked to me, I said quietly. Dylan huffed out a small laugh. Yeah? And said what exactly? I didn't have an answer for that. Because he was right. There wasn't an easy version of this conversation. No casual way to bring it up without risking everything getting weird. We stood there for a second, just looking at each other. You're shaking, he said. I blinked. I'm not. Your hands. He nodded slightly. I glanced down. Damn. He wasn't wrong. I flexed my fingers, trying to play it off. It's cold. It's not that cold. Before I could respond, he reached out. Slow. Deliberate. His fingers wrapped lightly around my wrist. And just like that, everything in my body went completely still. It wasn't a big move. Barely anything, really. But the contact. It felt like way more than it should have. Like every nerve in my body suddenly decided to wake up at once. Dylan noticed. I could tell by the way his grip tightened just slightly. Not enough to trap me. Just enough to keep me there. You always react like that? He asked quietly. To what? I said, even though I knew exactly what he meant. To me. My breath caught. Because there it was. No more pretending. No more guessing. Just the truth, sitting right there between us. And for the first time since I'd met him, I didn't look away. Maybe, I admitted. His eyes darkened slightly at that. and the way his thumb shifted, just barely brushing against my wrist. Yeah. That definitely didn't feel like something a guy does when he can't stand you. If anything, it felt like the exact opposite. And that realization? That was the moment everything started to change. I should have pulled my hand away. That would have been the normal reaction. The safe one. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting him hold my wrist like it was the most natural thing in the world, even though my heart was going completely out of control. Dylan noticed. Of course he did. You're not stopping me, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. I swallowed, forcing myself to stay steady. You're not giving me a reason to. His jaw tightened slightly at that, like he wasn't expecting me to push back. Careful, he murmured. You don't even know what I'm thinking right now. I let out a small breath. Then maybe you should stop being vague. For a second, either of us moved. Then his grip shifted. Not letting go. Just sliding. From my wrist down into my hand. Our fingers brushing, then slowly, deliberately, fitting together. That was new. And somehow, worse. Because this wasn't accidental anymore. This wasn't something you could explain away as a moment, or tension, or curiosity. This was a choice. And he was making it. Still think I don't like you? He asked. His voice was lower now. Rougher. I shook my head slightly, my eyes locked on where our hands were joined. No, I admitted. Good. Silence settled again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything we weren't saying. All the months of almosts. Of looks that lingered too long. Of moments that felt like something but were never acknowledged. Until now. You've been driving me crazy, you know that? He said after a second. I glanced up at him. Me? Yeah, you. He let out a quiet breath, like he was finally letting something out that he'd been holding in for way too long. The way you act around me, he continued. Like you want to say something but you won't. Like you're always just about to cross a line and then you pull back. I frowned slightly. I could say the same about you. Yeah. He nodded. That's because I was doing the exact same thing. That almost made me laugh. Almost. But the moment was too intense for that. So what changed? I asked. Dylan didn't hesitate this time. You being alone with me. That sent something sharp through my chest. Yeah? Yeah. His thumb brushed slowly over the back of my hand, absent-minded, like he didn't even realize he was doing it. Or maybe he did. I kept telling myself it wasn't real, he said. That I was just bored or reading into things. But then tonight. He trailed off, his gaze dropping briefly to my lips before coming back up. You were right there. And I realized I didn't want to keep pretending. My breath hitched slightly. Because that look? That wasn't subtle. Not even close. Dylan, I started, but I didn't even know what I was going to say. He stepped closer again. Now there was basically no space left between us. You gonna tell me to stop? He asked. I should have. Seriously. There were about 100 reasons why I should have. Work. Complications. The fact that this could blow up in ways either of us were ready for. But standing there, with him looking at me like that, none of those reasons felt strong enough. No, I said. And that was all it took. His hand tightened around mine, just slightly. And then his other hand came up, brushing against my jaw. Slow. Careful. Like he was giving me time to react. To pull away. To change my mind. I didn't. I couldn't. My body felt completely locked in place, like moving would break whatever this was before it even fully started. Last chance, he murmured. But there was something in his voice. Like he didn't actually want me to take it. I shook my head barely. And that was it. That was the moment. Because the second I did, he closed the distance. His lips met mine, and for a split second, everything just stopped. No thoughts. No overthinking. Just that. It wasn't rushed. Wasn't aggressive. If anything, it was careful. Like he'd been holding himself back for so long that even now, he wasn't sure how far he was allowed to go. But when I didn't pull away, when I kissed him back, something shifted. His grip on my hand tightened, pulling me just a little closer as his other hand slid from my jaw to the back of my neck. And yeah, that's when it stopped feeling careful. The kiss deepened, slower at first, then more certain. Like he'd finally decided to stop holding back. And I felt it. Every bit of it. All that tension that had been building between us for months. It was all right there now. Real. Unavoidable. His thumb pressed lightly against the side of my neck, and I swear my entire body reacted to it. A quiet breath slipped out of me before I could stop it. Dylan noticed. Of course he did. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his forehead resting lightly against mine. Yeah, he said under his breath. That's exactly what I thought. I blinked, still trying to catch up. What? A small, almost disbelieving smile pulled at his lips. That you'd react like that? I let out a shaky breath. You sound pretty confident for someone who was avoiding me for months. He huffed a quiet laugh. I wasn't avoiding you. Could have fooled me. I was trying not to do exactly what I just did. That made my chest tighten again. Because now that it had happened, there was no undoing it. No going back to normal. And I think we both knew that. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Different. Like we just crossed into something neither of us fully understood yet. But neither of us wanted to step back from either. So what now? I asked quietly. Dylan didn't answer right away. His hand was still at the back of my neck, his thumb tracing slow, absent patterns like he was thinking. Then he looked at me again. And this time, there was nothing uncertain about his expression. Now, he said. He leaned in just slightly, his voice dropping. We stop pretending this isn't a thing. And the way he said it? Yeah. That wasn't a suggestion. That was a decision. We didn't move right away after that. Which probably says a lot. Because if this had just been some impulsive thing, some random, heat of the moment mistake, one of us would have stepped back. Said something to break it. Laugh it off. Create distance. But neither of us did. Dylan's hand was still at the back of my neck, steady, warm, like he didn't plan on letting go anytime soon. And I was still standing there, way too close, like I'd forgotten how to take a step back. So we're just deciding this now? I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. He tilted his head slightly, watching me. You sound like you want me to say no. I didn't say that. Didn't have to. There was a hint of a smirk there, but it didn't feel cocky. More like, he was trying to read me without pushing too hard. I exhaled, glancing away for a second before looking back at him. This is gonna make things complicated. Probably, he admitted. And you don't care? He didn't even hesitate. No. That answer hit different. Not reckless. Not careless. Just certain. And for some reason, that made something in my chest settle instead of panic. Jackson, he added, his voice a little softer now. I've been overthinking this for months. I'm kind of done doing that. Months. Hearing him say it out loud made everything feel more real. You've really been dealing with this that long? I asked. He huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah. You think you were subtle? I frowned. I thought I was. You weren't. Great. He smiled, actually smiled, and it caught me off guard. It wasn't the casual, social smile I'd seen him give everyone else at work. This one felt real. Like it was just for me. You're easy to read, he said. At least to me. Clearly not, since I thought you hated me. That made him shake his head. I didn't hate you, he said. I was trying not to look at you like this. His hand shifted slightly on my neck as he said it, his thumb brushing just under my ear. Yeah. That definitely didn't help my ability to think straight. Yeah, well, I muttered. You were doing a great job of coming off like an asshole. He laughed at that, low, genuine. Fair. The tension eased just a little, but it didn't disappear. If anything, it just changed shape. Less uncertain, more intentional. So what does this actually mean? I asked after a second. For us? For whatever this is. Dylan didn't answer right away. His gaze flicked between my eyes like he was trying to figure out how honest to be. It means I'm not pretending anymore, he said. And it means I don't want you to either. That was direct. Okay, I said slowly. But what does that look like? He stepped back just enough to actually look at me fully this time. And yeah, I felt the distance immediately. Not a lot, but enough to notice. It looks like we stop acting like coworkers who barely tolerate each other, he said, and start acting like whatever this is turning into. And at work? His expression shifted slightly at that. Yeah, he admitted. That's the tricky part. Exactly. A beat of silence passed. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair again. At work, we keep it normal, he said. No one needs to know anything unless we decide they do. So, back to ignoring me during the day? I asked. He gave me a look. Not ignoring you, he said. Just not this. This, I repeated, glancing down briefly before looking back up at him. Yeah. I hesitated. Because I got it. Logically, it made sense. But at the same time, something about going back to pretending like nothing had changed felt weird now. Especially after this. Hey, he said softer. I looked at him. I'm not saying I go back to acting like I don't like you, he added. I'm just saying we don't make it obvious. I studied his face for a second. You're really okay with that? For now, he shrugged slightly. Yeah. Unless you're not. I thought about it. About everything that had just happened. About how fast things had shifted from nothing to whatever this was. I think I just need to get used to the idea that you don't hate me, I admitted. That earned a small smile. I never did. Could have fooled me, I muttered again. He stepped closer, not as close as before, but enough that the space between us felt intentional again. You're gonna keep bringing that up, aren't you? For a while, yeah? Fair. Another quiet pause. You good? He asked. The question caught me off guard. Not because of what he asked, but how he asked it. Like he actually cared about the answer. I nodded slowly. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah. I hesitated, then added, just processing. Same. For a second, it felt like we were back on even ground. Not confused. Not guessing. Just figuring it out together. And honestly, that felt new. Come on, he said after a moment, nodding toward the parking lot. It's late. Yeah. We started walking again, side by side. But this time, it felt completely different. Closer. Even without touching. When we reached my car, I stopped, turning toward him. So this is where we go back to normal? I asked. Dylan leaned against the car next to mine, watching me. Depends what you mean by normal. You know what I mean. He considered that for a second. Then pushed off the car slightly, stepping closer again. Not completely, he said. And before I could ask what that meant, he reached out, grabbing the front of my hoodie lightly and pulling me in just enough to press a quick, firm kiss against my lips. Short. But not casual. Not even close. When he pulled back, there was that same look in his eyes as before. Focused. Certain. Just enough to remind you, he said quietly. My heart did that thing again. Remind me of what? A faint smirk. That I don't hate you. I let out a breath, shaking my head slightly. Yeah. I think I've got that part now. Good. He stepped back, finally putting some real distance between us. I'll see you tomorrow, Jackson. And just like that, he turned and walked to his car like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just completely flipped my entire understanding of him upside down. I stood there for a second, staring after him. Then got into my car, my head still spinning. Because yeah, things were definitely not the same anymore. And somehow, I had a feeling tomorrow was going to be even harder than tonight. I barely slept. Not because I wasn't tired, I was exhausted. But every time I closed my eyes, my brain just replayed everything from the night before on a loop. The way Dylan looked at me. What he said. What he did. And yeah, that kiss at my car? That part kept coming back the most. It wasn't even the fact that it happened. It was how natural it felt. Like it wasn't something new, just something we'd both been holding back. By the time my alarm went off, I felt like I'd only been asleep for maybe 20 minutes. Which made going into work that morning interesting. Because now I had to see him again. And act normal. Whatever normal even meant at this point. I got there a little earlier than usual, mostly to avoid walking in at the same time as him. I told myself it was just to get a head start on the day, but that was a lie. I just needed a minute to get my head straight. To remind myself. At work, we keep it normal. No one needs to know. Right. Easy. Except it wasn't. Because the second I walked in and saw his desk empty, my stomach dropped a little. Which was stupid. He was probably just running late. Or grabbing coffee. Or literally anything normal. Still, I noticed. I sat down at my desk, trying to focus on emails, but my attention kept drifting. Every sound. Every movement. I kept looking up without meaning to. There he is. My head snapped up. Dylan. Standing a few feet away, setting his bag down like it was any other morning. Like nothing had changed. And for a second, I thought maybe I imagined everything. Because his expression? Completely neutral. Morning, he said. Just like that. Same tone. Same casual energy. Like last night never happened. It threw me off more than I expected. Morning, I replied, probably a little slower than I should have. He nodded once, then sat down at his desk, already pulling up something on his computer. And that was it. No look. No pause. No anything. I stared at my screen, my brain trying to catch up. Okay. So this is what he meant. Keep it normal. I forced myself to focus on work, but it felt off. Not bad. Just different. Because now I knew. Every time I heard his voice across the room, every time I caught a glimpse of him moving around, it all felt charged in a way it didn't before. Like there was something just under the surface that no one else could see. And it was driving me a little crazy. By mid-morning, I was starting to think maybe I'd overestimated everything. Maybe last night had just been a moment. Maybe he woke up and decided it was a bad idea. Wouldn't be the first time someone changed their mind after the fact. The thought didn't sit well. But it made more sense than whatever this was. Until. Jackson. I looked up. Dylan was standing next to my desk. Close. Not too close. But closer than he needed to be. Yeah? Can you come help me with something real quick? His tone was normal. Professional. Exactly what anyone else would hear if they were listening. Yeah? I said, standing up. I followed him across the office, trying not to overthink it. Probably just work. Just work. Except he didn't stop at his desk. He kept walking. Past the main area. Toward the back hallway. My chest tightened slightly. Dylan. Relax, he muttered, just low enough that no one else would hear. We reached one of the smaller meeting rooms. Empty. Of course. He stepped inside, holding the door open just enough for me to follow. The second I did, he closed it. And the click of the door shutting? Yeah. That felt a little too loud. I turned to face him. What are you? I didn't get to finish. Because he stepped forward, faster this time, and suddenly I was backed up against the table behind me. Dylan. Morning, he said again. But this time? Completely different. Lower. Closer. And before I could react, his hand came up, gripping lightly at my waist as he leaned in. And kissed me. Not quick this time. Not controlled. Nothing like last night. This was. Yeah. This was something else. Like all that restraint from earlier? Gone. I barely had time to process it before I was kissing him back, my hands instinctively grabbing onto his shirt. And yeah. So much for keeping it normal. His grip tightened slightly, pulling me closer as the kiss deepened, and I felt that same rush hit me all over again. Stronger this time. Because now there was no confusion. No uncertainty. Just him. And me. And whatever this thing was that we'd started. After a second, he pulled back just enough to breathe, his forehead resting lightly against mine. Told you, he murmured. I was still catching my breath. Told me what? That I wasn't going back to ignoring you. I let out a shaky breath. This doesn't feel like not ignoring. A faint smirk. Yeah, he said. I might have underestimated myself. I shook my head slightly, still trying to catch up. You act like nothing happened out there, I said, gesturing vaguely toward the office. And then you dragged me in here and. And what? He asked, quieter now. I didn't answer. Because honestly, I didn't have the words for it. He studied my face for a second, like he was trying to read something. Then his expression softened, just slightly. You okay? He asked again. Same question as last night. Same tone. And somehow, that grounded me a little. Yeah, I said. Just, you're confusing as hell. He huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah, I've been told that. No, seriously, I said. Pick a version. Distant coworker or. I gestured between us. Or this? He finished. Yeah. He didn't answer right away. Instead, his hand shifted slightly at my waist, not pulling me closer this time, just resting there. I'm both, he said finally. That's not helpful. It's honest. I exhaled, leaning back slightly against the table. That's gonna take some getting used to. Yeah, he nodded. Same here. For a second, we just stood there again. Close. But calmer now. Less overwhelming than a minute ago. Someone's gonna notice if we stay in here too long, I said. Probably. Neither of us moved. Dylan. Yeah? We should go. Another beat. Then he sighed, stepping back. Yeah, he said. We should. But before he turned away, he leaned in one more time. Quick. Deliberate. A short kiss like earlier. Just enough to remind you, he said quietly. I rolled my eyes a little, but I couldn't stop the small smile that came with it. Yeah? I remember. Good. He opened the door and walked out like nothing happened, leaving me standing there, trying to pull myself together before following him back into a room full of people who had absolutely no idea what was going on. And somehow, that made it even more intense. The rest of the day felt unreal. Not in a dramatic way. Just subtle. Like everything looked the same on the surface. Same desks, same conversations, same routine. But underneath it, something had shifted completely. And only we knew it. I tried to focus. I really did. Emails, meetings, random conversations with coworkers. I went through all of it like normal. Nodding at the right times, answering when I needed to. But my attention kept drifting. Mostly to him. Dylan moved through the day like nothing had changed. Talking to people. Cracking the occasional joke. Focused on his work. If anyone looked at him, they'd see the same guy as always. But now I noticed things I hadn't before. The way his eyes flicked toward me sometimes, quick, almost unnoticeable. The way he'd pause for half a second longer than necessary if we crossed paths. The way his tone shifted, just slightly, when he said my name. Small things. Easy to miss. Unless you knew what to look for. And now I definitely did. Around lunch, I was grabbing something from the break room when he walked in. Just the two of us again. The second the door swung shut behind him, the air changed. Not as intense as earlier. But still there. That same underlying tension. You avoiding me now? He asked casually, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. I leaned back against the counter. No. Could have fooled me. I raised an eyebrow. You're the one acting like nothing happened. That's the plan, remember? Yeah, well, you're doing a little too good of a job. He glanced at me, a faint smirk tugging at his mouth. You want me to be worse at it? I hesitated. Maybe a little. That earned a quiet chuckle. He twisted the cap off his bottle, taking a sip before stepping closer. Not all the way. Just enough. You sure about that? He said under his breath. My pulse picked up instantly. Dylan. The door handle rattled. We both stepped back at the same time. Like it was instinct. A second later, one of our coworkers walked in, completely oblivious. Hey, guys. Hey, Dylan replied easily. Like nothing had just happened. Like he hadn't been standing close enough to me a second ago that I could feel his breath. I grabbed my coffee a little too quickly. I should get back. Yeah, he said, just as casual. But as I walked past him, his fingers brushed against mine. Quick. Barely there. No one else would have noticed. But I did. And the way it sent a jolt straight through me? Yeah. That didn't help. Not even a little. By the time the workday finally ended, I felt drained. Not from the actual work. From him. From the constant awareness. From pretending nothing was happening when everything clearly was. I packed up my stuff, trying to act normal as people started heading out. And just like last night, I waited. Not on purpose. At least, that's what I told myself. But sure enough, a few minutes later. You heading out? I turned. Dylan. Again. Same as yesterday. Except now, it didn't feel like a coincidence. Yeah, I said. Same. We walked out together without really saying anything else. And just like before, the second we stepped outside, that shift happened again. Like the work version of us stayed behind in the building. You're quieter today, he said as we crossed the lot. I shrugged. Just thinking. About? I glanced at him. Everything. He nodded slightly, like he expected that. Fair. A few steps passed in silence. Regret it? He asked. That made me stop. Seriously? He stopped too, turning to face me. I'm asking. I studied him for a second, trying to read his expression. There was no teasing there. No smirk. Just genuine curiosity. No, I said finally. Do you? He didn't even hesitate. No. Something in my chest eased at that. Then why ask? He shoved his hands into his pockets, exhaling lightly. Because this isn't exactly simple, he said. And I'd rather know if you're second-guessing it now instead of later. That's fair, I admitted. Another quiet pause. Then I added, I'm not. His eyes flicked up to mine. Good. We reached my car again. Same spot. Same setup. But this time, it felt different. Less uncertain. More established. So what happens next? I asked. Dylan leaned against the car again, like he had last night. But this time, there was no hesitation in the way he looked at me. We keep going, he said. Going where? He smirked slightly. Forward. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now. I let out a small breath, shaking my head. You're really just figuring this out as you go, huh? Yeah, he admitted. You? Same. Another pause. You busy tonight? He asked. That caught me off guard. Why? He shrugged slightly, but his gaze didn't leave mine. Thought maybe we stopped doing this in parking lots and empty offices. My chest tightened just a little at that. Yeah? Yeah. I hesitated for half a second. No. I'm not busy. A small, satisfied smile. Good. He pushed off the car, stepping closer. Not rushing. Not hesitating either. Then come over, he said. Simple. Direct. And yeah, there was definitely a different kind of tension in that now. Not just curiosity. Not just uncertainty. Something more intentional. Your place? I asked. Yeah. I studied him for a second. This was different. A step further than anything we'd done so far. No work. No hiding behind. We'll keep it normal. Just us. Alone. You sure that's a good idea? I asked. He held my gaze. No, he said honestly. But I don't really care. That made me laugh quietly. Yeah, that sounds about right. So? He asked. I took a breath. Then nodded. Okay. Whatever this was? Yeah. It was definitely moving forward. The drive to Dylan's place felt longer than it actually was. Not because of traffic. Because my brain wouldn't shut up. Every possible outcome kept running through my head. Good. Bad, complicated, messy. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just some random thing anymore. This was turning into something real. And that made it a lot harder to ignore the risks. By the time I pulled up outside his apartment building, my grip on the steering wheel was tighter than it needed to be. Dylan was already there. Of course he was. Leaning casually against the wall near the entrance like he'd been waiting, but not in an impatient way. Just there. Watching. The second he saw my car, he pushed off the wall and walked over. No hesitation. No second guessing. Just that same quiet confidence. I stepped out, closing the door behind me. For a second, we just looked at each other. No office. No coworkers. No pretending. Just us. You made it, he said. Yeah, I replied, a little more aware of myself than usual. Still time to change your mind. He huffed a quiet laugh. Not happening. Something about how easily he said that made my chest feel lighter. Good, I said before I could stop myself. His eyes flicked up slightly at that. Yeah? I shrugged, trying to play it off. Would have been a long drive for nothing. Sure, he said, clearly not buying it. But he didn't push. Instead, he nodded toward the building. Come on. His apartment was exactly what I expected. Clean, but not obsessively so. Minimal, but not empty. A couple personal touches here and there. Books, a guitar in the corner, a jacket thrown over the back of a chair like he'd just left it there earlier. It felt like him. Comfortable. Uncomplicated. Nice place, I said, stepping further inside. Yeah, it's all right. He closed the door behind us, and that soft click. Yeah. That did something. Different from the office. More final. I turned back to face him. And just like that, the air shifted again. Stronger this time. No interruptions. No risk of someone walking in. Just quiet. You nervous? He asked. I let out a small breath. A little. Good. I frowned slightly. Good? He stepped closer, slower this time. Means you're actually thinking about this, he said. Not just going along with it. That's supposed to be reassuring? Yeah. I shook my head a little, but I didn't step back. Are you nervous? I asked. He paused. Just for a second. Yeah, he admitted. That caught me off guard. You don't seem like it. I'm better at hiding it. Clearly. A faint smirk. Then silence again. But this time, it felt different. Less like tension building. More like something settling. Like we'd both already decided to be here. And now we just had to figure out what that actually meant. So, I said, breaking it. What now? Dylan studied me for a second. Not intense. Not overwhelming. Just steady. Now we slow down, he said. That wasn't what I expected. What? He shrugged slightly. We've been building this up for months without saying anything, he said. Last thing I want is to rush it now and screw it up. That actually made sense. And weirdly, it made everything feel more real. So this isn't just. I gestured vaguely between us. No, he said simply. Not hesitant. Not unsure. Just honest. And that hit harder than anything else so far. I nodded slowly. Okay. He stepped a little closer, not crowding me, just closing the space enough that it felt intentional. We figure it out, he added. Together? Yeah. I let out a quiet breath. Yeah. I can do that. A small smile. Not big. But real. Good. You want something to drink? He asked, like we hadn't just been standing there having that conversation. I blinked. Yeah? Sure. He nodded toward the kitchen. Water? Beer? Water's fine. Cool. He turned away, heading toward the kitchen like everything was normal. And maybe that was the point. Not forcing anything. Not rushing. Just letting it be what it was. I leaned back slightly against the counter, watching him as he grabbed 2 glasses. And for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel overwhelmed. Or confused. Or like I was trying to catch up. It just felt right. Which, honestly, might have been the most unexpected part of all. I didn't expect it to feel easy. Not simple. Nothing about this was simple. But easy in the sense that I wasn't constantly second-guessing every move anymore. Dylan handed me the glass, his fingers brushing mine for just a second. That small contact still hit. Still noticeable. But it didn't send me spiraling like before. It just felt normal now. Which was kind of insane, considering where we'd been less than 24 hours ago. We moved to the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch at first. A little distance. Not awkward, just cautious. Like we were both aware that whatever happened next mattered more than anything that came before. So, I said, exhaling slightly. This is weird, right? Dylan glanced at me, one corner of his mouth lifting. Yeah, he admitted. A little. Just a little? He shrugged. Okay, more than a little. I huffed a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Good. Glad we're on the same page. A brief silence settled, but it wasn't heavy. Just real. So what are we doing? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back slightly, studying me in that same steady way he had earlier. Right now, he said. Yeah. We're sitting on a couch, he replied. I gave him a look. You know what I mean? Another small smile. Yeah. I do. He shifted then, not closer all at once, but enough that the space between us felt less intentional. Less like a barrier. Honestly, he continued, I think we stopped trying to define it so fast. I considered that. You're usually this patient? I asked. No, he said. Just don't want to mess this up. That did something to me. Because for the first time, it wasn't just implied. He actually said it. This mattered. I nodded slowly. Yeah. Same. Another quiet moment. You ever think about why it was me? He asked. That caught me off guard. What? He shrugged lightly, but his gaze stayed on me. Out of everyone, he said. Why me? I let out a breath, leaning back slightly. I don't know, I admitted. You were just there. That's not an answer. I know. I thought about it for a second. You weren't like everyone else, I said. You kept your distance. Didn't try to impress anyone. Didn't need to. He raised an eyebrow slightly. You make that sound like a good thing. It is, I said. At least, it was to me. He looked at me for a second longer than usual. Like he was actually taking that in. And you? I asked. Why me? He didn't hesitate this time. Because you looked at me like I wasn't just another guy in the room. That hit harder than I expected. And you didn't push, he added. You could have. Plenty of chances. But you didn't. I thought you didn't want me to, I said. I didn't know if I did, he admitted. And now? A small pause. Now I do. Simple. Direct. No overthinking. And yeah, that settled something in me. The room went quiet again, but this time it felt different. Not like we were waiting for something to happen. More like we were letting it. Dylan shifted slightly closer. Not rushing. Just closing that last bit of space. Our knees brushed. Neither of us moved away. You still nervous? He asked quietly. A little, I admitted. Good, he said again, softer this time. I shook my head. You're weirdly into that. He smiled faintly. Just means it's real. I looked at him for a second. Then nodded. Yeah, it does. Another pause. Then, without overthinking it, I leaned in. Not rushed. Not hesitant either. Just sure. And when our lips met this time, it felt different from before. Less like something we'd been holding back. More like something we were choosing. His hand came up, resting lightly against my side, not pulling, not controlling. Just there. Grounding. The kiss was slower. Easier. Like neither of us felt the need to prove anything anymore. When we pulled back, we stayed close. Foreheads almost touching. No rush to move away. No tension to fill. Just quiet. You still think I couldn't stand you? He murmured. I let out a small breath, a hint of a smile pulling at my lips. Yeah, I said. I think I got that one wrong. He huffed softly. Yeah. You did. I looked at him for a second longer. I'm glad I did. That earned a real smile. The kind I hadn't seen from him before all of this. And for the first time since this whole thing started. It didn't feel like a question anymore. It felt like the beginning of something. Something real. Something neither of us expected. But neither of us wanted to walk away from either. And honestly, that was enough.